Okay, so sorry about that interruption. Needed to get that. Because I was being a little distracted by my phone ringing in the last video, I said that D5, the black got initiative. That was not what I meant to say. White, of course, still has the initiative, but what I meant to say is I think black equalizes in this position. I mean, this is a very, very stable position, and even though white still has the first move advantage, this is just a really solid position for both players. But the key idea, I think, in this position is that uh, while both players have isolated their queen's bishops, right? Uh, the idea is that both white is hoping that his light square bishop, which will be used in an attack against the black king on the king side, will be the crucial difference from the queen's bishop that is going to be trapped in by the light square pawns. So again, what are we talking about? We're talking about making good moves. We're talking about self-questioning, right? Where is my opponent going and why? And before you move, you got to stop. And you don't decide and calculate a move until you know why he did it. So why is he doing this move? Well, very simple. It seizes the center. He gets very good pressure on both e4 and c4, which are critical squares, and he is, able to develop his pieces even more. So fine move. So bishop d3, right? I've already explained why I'm doing this. I'm looking to attack on the king side. That's kind of the whole point of the Kali-Zukertort. And then, and here, black plays c5. This move, again, very, very solid move. It strikes at white center. And again, it also, if white takes at this point, then has this excellent developing take back with the bishop. It strikes at the center and also paves the way for the knight to come to c6 and put extra pressure. Very, very good move. But there are other reasons why he might make this move. He might want to be looking to come to c4 and harass the bishop. But I'll get it off this diagonal, which is not really something you have to worry about. But in this position, white has already shown his intention to play the Kali in one way or another. But there are different ways you can go with it. You can go the traditional Kali, and if c4, right, you just play bishop c2, which is perfectly fine. Or you can choose to play the Kali-Zukertort, which is b3. That stops the b4 push, and it makes the way for the queen's bishop in order to come to b2. And even though the d4 pawn keeps it fenced in, right, there's a chance to maybe exchange that pawn at one point, or perhaps open up the center if there's a push on either e4 or c4. So black plays another really solid move, knight c6, completely sensible, right? Now again, right, where did my opponent go? He played knight c6. Why did he go there? Well, to add pressure to the center, but also he could have gone there because he might want to harass my bishop on d3. And do I need to deal with this, right? Before I move, do I need to address this move? And the answer is yes, I do. Just as I needed to address this pawn push, I need to address this harassing of my bishop. So I choose to play a3. Now, I could have chosen to go different lines. I could have just keep developing my bishop, and I could have consented to this. Right? I would have then needed to play bishop e2, and I really didn't want to do that. Or I could have played, knight d2, which is another solid move. And if he harasses my bishop, right, once again, I just play bishop e2, and he's definitely gonna get kicked eventually. But I don't want to even deal with that. I want to keep my bishop where it is. So a3 keeps that queenside knight off of b4, and I am free to keep developing without harassment. So here's where the game gets weird. And again, with the whole how do I come up with a move? You ask where and why, and then you stop before you ask, do I need to respond? What's the best way to respond? If not, how do I improve my position? So there are going to be times when your opponent makes a move you don't understand. Sometimes it's because they're really good, and sometimes it's just a bad move. And so for this game, I was playing a really strong opponent. But then he plays King D7, which completely confuses me. And if I was just playing anyone, I would say, okay, well, this person, I might have thought, okay, this person's just bad at chess, right? Why would you move your king and obstruct your pieces for absolutely no reason? I mean, this move obstructs the queen from D6, right? It also obstructs the bishop. It's taking away black's ability to castle, leaves his king in the center where he's more vulnerable to attack. There's all sorts of reasons why. There's all sorts of reasons why this move is bad. But I have to try to think about, well, what could he might be trying to do? And I'm honestly not sure. I mean, it is possible, right, that he's trying to more rapidly get the rook to the E square. But if you move the bishop first and castle, I mean, the only difference is one move, and that's not really worth that. So I think this is a really bad move. Interestingly enough, what Stockfish wants me to do in this position is to take the pawn and to clear the diagonal for the bishop in order to just get my pieces in the center to attack as soon as possible. But, the point is that when you're not entirely sure what your opponent is doing, and you don't really need to address it, I say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to improve my position, right? Bishop to B2. I've been shuttled for a reason. If he takes it, I can always open up this diagonal on the next move if need be, or, if not, there's always the fact that I'm just building up the slow and steady pressure. So he plays bishop d6, and once again, I mean, the temptation to play d takes c5 is there, which may very well be the strongest move, but I'm not entirely sure what's going on, so I'm just going to keep building. I just keep developing, right? So knight bd2, I'm just playing common Cayley-Zukertort moves, just trying to keep my development pretty normal, unsure of what he's going to do. And then now rook to e8. Now, at this point, I began to realize, okay, maybe, not necessarily, but maybe there's a rhyme to this reason. Maybe there's a method to the madness. And again, I thought about clearing the e5 square this way, opening up for that bishop. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, king's in the center, and I want to keep things in the center if I can. And the traditional Cayley-Zukertort move is just to play knight e5, and then you follow that with, pawn to f4, and you secure it. And what I like about this move, and the reason why I made it, is because if the knight stays there, because obviously, you're not going to play knight takes knight, because if knight takes knight, one times knight fork, right, and white is winning. But, even bishop takes knight, right, is not particularly good, because now the knight has to go somewhere. And where is the knight going to go? I mean, its only square is knight g8, and this is not a good square. I mean, I guess you could try to trap the bishop, but I'm not entirely sure that trying to trap the bishop would even work, because this is pinned, right, and there's all sorts of things going on here. So I play this mainly just to keep the e5 pawn from pushing and to try to keep black cramped as long as humanly possible. That was the goal. So he's in check. He decides not to go to the queen side. I don't blame him. I don't know. This could have been a very, very different game if the king had just kept going towards the queen side. But he plays king e7, and I just continue developing, right, with castle. I could play knight f5, but at this point, or f4, but it's not as necessary. I want to get my king safe. f4 is coming if he doesn't take on this move. And king to e7. So now, what do we see? Well, what we've seen is that the king has made a number of moves now. He moved from e8 to d7, and then from, the king moved from e8 to d7, then from d7 to e7, and now to f8. So he's wasted 3 tempi on moving that king, and that has given just white just this incredible lead in development. So now I get the tabia of the Kali Zukertort system, and black is down a significant number of moves. I mean, a significant number. I mean, if black had had a chance to keep all of those moves, he could have maybe moved b6 down, also gotten the bishop on d7, and maybe even also exchanged the pawns. So white is just killing black in development here. And that's when black plays a6. I'm not, and so, okay, where did my opponent go? A6. And why? Well, I'm guessing because he's trying to avoid the soft pin on the knight. He can't move the d pawn anytime soon because right now the knight would be hanging if he did that. That's not good. But still, this is not where the real danger is. I mean, the queen side, I suppose he might be wanting to prepare something like b5, but he has to prepare that with another move first. He'd have to prepare it with something like queen c7 in order to defend the knight before you can do something like that. So I'm not entirely sure why he's doing this move. I'm guessing it's to push b5 and to attack on the queen side. But do I need to respond to this move, right? Now that I've stopped to make sure I understand, do I need to respond to this move? And I say, you know what? I do not. I do not need to respond, and so I just keep going. G4. And then king g8. That's now 4 tempi for the queen, or for the king, black king rather, and white is just killing him on time. And now I have time for pawn to g5. Now, basically with this move, white is winning because the knight really has nowhere to go. I mean, he can come down here where he is, he can come down here where he can be double attacked, right? But there are issues with that. So let me just demonstrate some of that, right? And not only does white win a pawn here, but he's also threatening this fork, and it's pretty nasty, as well as also threatening this take, which opens up the bishop this way. And it's just a lot of really nasty stuff going on. But that's probably in my opinion, that's probably black's strongest continuation. There are also continuations with bishop takes e5, and then after takes, then knight e4. For this one, the queen is on this pawn, so I'm supposing that you try to you take with bishop first, because if pawn takes pawn, then knight takes pawn, you can try to hold on to it. But the thing is, you don't even, black doesn't have to wait though. He can take with check and then still take back, but at least you still keep the knight here in the center attacking the queen and also attacking c5, and the rook comes over. And so there's a lot of tactical stuff going on. But the main thing is I'm pushing this, right, because I'm trying to get the knight away from the defense of h7. And I'm hoping that he plays a move, the moves that, he plays in my wildest dreams, excuse me, that's not what I want to do. The moves he plays in my wildest dreams are, I'm trying to get that arrow to disappear. Arrow, go away. There we go. Goodness gracious. The moves I'm hoping to play in my wildest dreams is simply to give up a piece, right, on either thing or h5, or even better than giving up a piece is knight to7. And this is actually the move he makes. And if you're playing a Kali Zukertort, one of the things I know is that every time the knight moves away from f6, you have to think about sacrificing your bishop on h7, the Greek gift sacrifice. This is especially true if you have a knight on a5 and the rook is not defending f7. If the rook is on e8 and not on f8 defending f7, then you absolutely need to play this capture. And then king takes, queen comes in, and it's mate in 5. I didn't see mate in 5, but I did see the following. So king moves, queen takes, king has to go here, knight check, comes down, rook comes up. Technically, I didn't have to play the knight down, knight here, I could have just played the rook up, but I just didn't see that first. I took this early check to try to make it a little bit harder. I fought for black to defend the position. So, and here we are, and black resigns. So the main thing, right, about these moves, right, is that again, you play the nonsense moves, but when your opponent plays nonsense moves, if you can ignore them, then you just ask, how can I improve my position? And in the next video, which I'll probably make tomorrow and not today, is going to be about that, this idea of how do I improve my position? In this game, I happened to be lucky and then I played a lot of what I knew to be bookish moves, right? A lot of moves that I knew to be thematic ideas in this opening to drive the knight away from the defense of the king on the king side, the bishop sacrifice, getting the queen to h5. I mean, a lot of these, but in a more general way, it's also important to know how to improve one's position. And we are going to talk about that more specifically next time. So anyway, just a short review, just to have a nice mnemonic device. What do you need to do? How do you come up with a move, right? Where and why? Where did my opponent move and why? And stop. Where, why, stop. Do not move until you know why they made their move. Do not calculate until you understand. And then you ask, right, once you know why they made this move, do I need to answer it? Does this move need to be responded to? If yes, what is the best way to respond to this move? And because you can't just pick the first thing that responds to the move. And if no, not, then how can you improve your position? So anyway, this is the Grand Patzer, and I'm signing off.